I was 12 years old when my family moved into an old farmhouse in Harrisville, Rhode Island in January 1971. My parents, Roger and Carolyn Perron, believed they had finally found the perfect country home where my 4 younger sisters and I could grow up surrounded by woods, fields, and history. The house was over 2 centuries old, and we immediately fell in love with it. From the moment we arrived, however, strange things began happening. The very first thing that disturbed us was our dog. She refused to enter the house no matter how much we called her. She barked at the doorway as though something invisible stood inside. At the time, we dismissed it as odd behavior. Soon after moving in, my mother began noticing little things that couldn't be explained. A broom she had leaned against the kitchen wall would appear somewhere else. Freshly swept dirt would mysteriously return to the floor. Kitchen utensils disappeared only to reappear exactly where she had already searched. At first, these incidents seemed harmless. As weeks passed, they became impossible to ignore. We began hearing footsteps in empty hallways. Doors opened and closed by themselves. Furniture moved when no one was touching it. Sometimes we heard voices whispering even though everyone in the family was together. Not every presence felt frightening. Some spirits seemed almost peaceful. Occasionally, I sensed an elderly woman quietly watching over us. Another spirit appeared curious rather than threatening. Living in the house felt as though we shared it with unseen neighbors who simply refused to leave. My mother experienced far more than the rest of us. Every morning she woke with unexplained bruises and scratches. She often complained of overwhelming exhaustion. Sometimes she believed someone was standing just behind her, breathing down her neck. As children, we tried to make sense of everything. My sisters and I would compare what each of us had seen. One might describe a woman in grey walking through a hallway. Another had heard footsteps on the staircase moments earlier. Sometimes several of us witnessed the same event from different rooms. Our father wanted nothing to do with ghosts. He believed there had to be ordinary explanations for everything. He was away frequently because of work, so he witnessed fewer incidents than the rest of us. He refused to abandon the house because it represented everything he had worked for. Even if something strange was happening, he wasn't prepared to walk away from our dream home. My mother became obsessed with researching the property's history. She discovered stories about previous families who had lived there over the centuries. According to local accounts, there had been accidental deaths, suicides, illnesses, drownings, and tragedies connected to the land. She became convinced that the house had accumulated generations of restless spirits. One name kept resurfacing: Bathsheba Sherman. Neighbors claimed she had practiced witchcraft and cursed the property. Years later, however, even I concluded that much of what had been said about Bathsheba was probably folklore rather than established fact, and I no longer believe she was necessarily responsible for what happened to us. The activity gradually intensified. Objects flew across rooms. Beds shook. Cold spots appeared without explanation. Some nights we barely slept because strange noises echoed through the walls. Eventually, word reached paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren. They contacted our family and asked to investigate. Lorraine believed immediately that the house contained multiple spirits, some harmless and others hostile. Over time, the Warrens made several visits. They interviewed us, examined the house, and attempted to understand whatever they believed was haunting the property. The most frightening event occurred during a séance. I secretly watched from a hidden place while the adults gathered around my mother. As the séance progressed, my mother's behavior changed dramatically. Her voice sounded unfamiliar. She appeared to enter a trance unlike anything I had ever witnessed. At one point, her chair reportedly lifted from the floor before she was thrown violently backward. My father was horrified. He believed the séance had endangered my mother rather than helping her. Furious, he ordered the Warrens to leave our home and never return. After that night, they never investigated our case again. Despite everything, we continued living in the farmhouse for nearly 10 years. That surprises many people because the movie makes it seem as though everything happened over a few weeks. In reality, the experiences stretched across almost a decade. We learned to live alongside whatever we believed occupied the house. Some days nothing happened. Other days we witnessed things that terrified us. Eventually, my mother reached her limit. She told my father she could not survive another winter there. By 1980, our family finally moved away. Leaving the farmhouse didn't erase what we had experienced. Some members of my family still believe the hauntings were entirely real. Others rarely speak about them publicly. I wrote my books because I wanted to tell our story as I remembered it, not as Hollywood portrayed it. When The Conjuring was released decades later, it introduced millions of people to our family. Although I appreciated the film, I have repeatedly said that most of it was fictionalized for dramatic effect. The real story unfolded slowly over years, involved many different alleged paranormal experiences rather than one evil entity, and ended not with a dramatic exorcism, but simply with our family deciding that it was finally time to leave.